Welcome to the Field of 68 Media Network and the Bulldog Broadcast. I'm your host, Dan Dickau. First off, thank you to our terrific sponsors, McGillivray Environmental. Thank you to KIP, Wave Capital Lending. Thank you to Dan Cantiana, Dan Can, as many in the Spokane community know him as well as Shoot 360 Spokane. So first off, big thanks to those sponsors. Helps us to pay our editors, pay our producers, and upload these great videos. Hopefully that you find a little bit of insight that you won't get anywhere else following Gonzaga basketball. But another big week coming up for Gonzaga. Each week is, and you can say this every single year to year, the stakes become even higher as you get into league play. In years past, the stakes were high because you were chasing a one seed, you were chasing a overall number one seed. There's been a couple years that you're chasing St. Mary's in the standings to be able to have a chance to win the WCC title. Last year was obviously important because of a couple of the hiccups early in the season where Gonzaga, from a lot of outsiders' perspectives, was outside the NCAA tournament until they get that big road win at Kentucky, and then having to kind of really compete and play well down the stretch at WCC to solidify another bid in the NCAA tournament. But this year is big for a ton of different reasons. One, missed opportunities in the non-conference, UCLA, UConn, Kentucky, West Virginia, to name a couple. But now it's important in the WCC simply because of Gonzaga's struggles defensively. They dropped two in a row, and not just two in a row, which is not normal for this program, but two in a row in league. So they're definitely trailing St. Mary's in the race for the WCC title. But the game against Oregon State, where a lot of those defensive miscues really started becoming evident, where they lost in overtime 74-65. And then carried over to that home loss, the rare home loss to Santa Clara, where Tyree Bryan just exploded for 35 points. But wanted to quickly kind of state of the union right now and look at, the adjustments that were made since those two losses, the full week off of practice that allowed, I think, Gonzaga to get right. And that's that kind of week off, or that one bye game ish, because you had a Saturday to Saturday game and you didn't have a Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday game as normal, allowed Gonzaga to get back in the routine of kind of like your preseason practice, where you can go back, you can have more live reps, you can have more physical reps, you can scrimmage, you can kind of break things down a little bit more conceptually and philosophically in regards to the foundation of what you do on offense and defense, as opposed to many times really locked in on your next opponent, or maybe looking at one or two small things that you need to improve upon. You can look at a whole plethora of things within your foundation of what you do. And I think when you look at the results against Portland, which we'll talk about in a second, you saw what must have been a really locked in week of practices, because they looked good after about the first 12 minutes when Portland, give Portland credit. They hung in there and they played really well early. But it was only a matter of time before Gonzaga ran away with that and blew that game out. But, State of the Union, EK doesn't get a start. I'm sure a lot of people were scratching their head asking why. But I think it's been festering for a little bit. You saw it at the Oregon State game where, he's chirping with opponents a little bit. He was frustrated with officials after getting fouled out. Luckily, he didn't get teed up after getting that fifth foul down in Corvallis. And then he gets a technical foul against Santa Clara. And, Coach Few didn't start him. And many times that's typical in a lot of programs, and it can be at times with Gonzaga, dependent on time, setting, scenario, circumstances around a technical foul, where he doesn't get a start the next game. Is it warranted? Not sure. I'm not in all those inner circle conversations, meetings, discussions, but whatever it did, it sparked a fire under him, and I thought he played really well. I thought he moved the basketball a little bit more than maybe he had in recent games, and that's not necessarily a knock on him, because so many times he's got that advantage. And if he's playing in single coverage, he feels as if he can score, and clearly he can score. So, it wasn't anything, I think that was too in depth to look at. So he didn't get the start. It'll be interesting to see against Oregon State on Tuesday night. Does he move back into the starting lineup, or after Braden Huff played so well, does he stay in the starting lineup? I think both of them, um, you know, provide an enormous scoring punch. I think Huff at times is a defensive liability. But I thought he looked really good on the defensive end against Portland, getting back in defensive transition early and quick in rotations, physical. It'll be, like I said, it'll be interesting to see if Ike moves back into the starting lineup, which I expect him to, or if they stay with Huff. The big interesting one is Innocenti moving into the starting lineup for Battle. Now, I think Innocenti is going to stay in that starting role. It's something that, in the limited minutes that I've seen from Innocenti this season, I've been wanting him to get more minutes. And I haven't necessarily pushed it on this podcast, but I have in regards to the regional broadcast with Greg Heister and Richard Fox, and I've talked to both of them at length. Like, I think he needs to play more. I think he can be a difference maker, because the opportunities that he's got early in the season have, for the most part, been offensive defensive substitutions. And it's been something where he hasn't had a chance to get in the rhythm of the game, which is harder to do offensively than it is defensively. I mean, he's wired defensively. He's coming in, he's locking down the opponent's best defender. And I think in the limited opportunities he's had to do that, he's done a nice job, but he hasn't had that extended 3, 4, 5 minute stretch where on the offensive end, if he's not comfortable with a three, passes it up. If he sees something on one closeout, maybe he just moves it to the next guy. But then when it comes up the next time, he's able to take advantage of it, whether it's drive the closeout, whether it's shoot it, whether it's quick post entry. And so I think what we saw with Innocenti was that first extended minute stretch was really good. And I think it's something to build upon. And so I was excited to see that. I would expect that. I think that will stay. And then the question becomes, how does Caliph Battle handle that? I think he started the season off tremendously. He's had some unbelievable games. I mean, you talk about, I think it was 10 of 12 or 11 of 13 from the field at Loyola Marymount for 27 points. But he's also had a couple games where there's been head scratchers in regards to being emotional, driving into a crowd, trying to draw fouls, and when the call doesn't go his way, you see that kind of snowball at times and affect his decision making and play later on throughout that game. So I'm not sure if this is a one game message or if it's a complete change in the rotation. I could see it going either way, but I really would like to see Innocenti stay in that starting position at least through this week. Give him 2 more games, home against Oregon State, at St. Mary's. But the thing you want to see with Battle is not lose your focus and not lose what can make you special in helping this team, and that's that scoring firepower and that punch. But you got to temper it in regards to how you attack, in particular in transition, and as mentioned, driving into a crowd trying to draw fouls. That can be difficult because he is truly an aggressive, wired to score player. And if you're not getting calls, if he's not able to get himself going, does that snowball in the negative direction and create him to be a non-factor? I would hope that's not the case. I think what you saw at the University of Portland game was a little concerning in the fact that he played 17, 18, 19 minutes, but he didn't take a single shot. And I don't think for him and for Gonzaga to reach their potential, their maximum this year, which I still think they're a second weekend team with how wide open this college basketball season is. I will still go on record and say I do think there's an opportunity for them to make a Final Four. I mean, if they shore up the defensive end of the floor, which there were great strides against University of Portland the other day, I still don't think that's out of the question. But I think you need Battle playing at his best. And I think Battle playing at his best and impacting the game for Gonzaga isn't taking 0 field goal attempts during the course of a game. So hopefully that was a one-off, and hopefully you can find that happy medium between being aggressive, looking to score, create things, as well as getting others involved, making the right decisions, the right reads, because we've seen how quickly he can score and how he can impact the game. You look at that Portland game, as mentioned, the Pilots hung in there for about the first maybe 12, 13 minutes, and then it was all Gonzaga after that. I mean, you talk about efficient offensive performances, 63% from the field, 31 assists, 14 of those coming from Nembhard. That's sharing the ball, moving the ball's popping. They score 105 points again. It's one of those things where you don't worry about the offense. Even in that 2-game slide, you weren't worried about the offense because, they're sitting at number 3 or number 4 in KenPom. That's never been the question. It's been defensively locking into the scouting reports, locking into keys when you see different sets, different actions happening, and staying keyed into your foundational concepts of your rotations or your assignments on the defensive end of the floor. And I think you saw a much better job of that against Portland. Hats off to Ben Gregg. After such a slow start to the season for him, he's been playing tremendous as of late. 24 points, a perfect 10 of 10 from the field at Portland. And I don't think people realize how difficult that is because that's where he grew up. And going and playing in your hometown with a target, so to speak, on your back by the opposing fans, and you wanting to play well in front of friends and family. And a lot of times that adds an internal pressure to the game. To go out and perform and play like that was awesome to see. And he continued to do the little things that's continued to make his season a success. Fly around on the defensive end, get extra possessions on the offensive glass, be an emotional leader, which is something that at times this team has missed. He's doing those things. Michael Ajayi, best game, I think, as a Gonzaga Bulldog. He rebounded the heck out of it against Portland the first matchup. He scored it really well down at LMU, and it looked as if everything kind of came together for the first time for him when he had 20 points. So that was great to see. Graham Ike doesn't get the start, but a good 14-point effort, very efficient. Braden Huff, 12 points. Nolan Hickman, 13, continues to shoot it really well from 3. Thank you to our presenting sponsors. If you have interest in joining the Bulldog Broadcast, the Field of 68 Media Network, for being a sponsor, don't hesitate to reach out to me, Dan Dickau, at hotmail.com. Presenting sponsor, McGillivray Environmental can handle any of your construction needs, specializing in new construction, repairs, residential and commercial asphalt paving, excavation, environmental remediation, and hazardous waste. Reach out to Kip McGillivray at McGillivray Environmental today at 208-556-6384 for your free estimate.
The world's leading immersive basketball training experience that combines in-person skill development with digital gamification and virtual competition. At Shoot 360, you will train with our coaches, measure your skills with our proprietary technology, and track your progress on the Shoot 360 mobile app. Shoot 360 Spokane. Unlock your game.
Are you interested in investing in Pacific Northwest real estate? Are you an accredited investor, private investor, or want to be a private investor? Look up my friend Dan Can's website, investwithdancan.com. I've known Dan for over a decade, and he is honest, hardworking, truthful, and will do a great job in helping you navigate the world of real estate lending and investing. Check him out today, investwithdancan.com. Ryan Nembhard was an interesting one. Mentioned the 14 assists, but shows you just the way he's wired to set the table and to think about his teammates, to make plays for them and to put them above himself at times. Only 2 points. That's one as a point guard who can score it a little bit like he can. I mean, he's not a big time scorer, but he needs to score to keep the defense honest, to shut down his passing lanes. Only taking a couple shots leading to 2 points. when you watch that game, I think essentially, what Portland was doing was they were daring him to beat him by the pass, and he continuously did it time and time again. I mean, some of the passes he makes just right on the money as far as in transition, throw aheads, or slow downs just enough to create the right angle to deliver it. I think one of the areas that he's been terrific at is pick and roll, keeping his dribble, probing just enough so that it gives the post player time to create an angle on the seal and then delivering that ball into the low block. He might be the best that I've seen over the years at Gonzaga of doing just that, patiently waiting for the post to get to their seal and then delivering it at the right angle. So that was great to see. When you look ahead to this week, it's the revenge game, the rematch with Oregon State. When a week and a half or so ago, they go down to Corvallis. They played really well on the offensive end of the floor, but they just defensively, they weren't there. A couple missed assignments when they went in zone in the first half, gave up wide open shots, in particular to Nate Kings, who had, I think, 20 in that first matchup. Down the stretch of the second half, Gonzaga mixed a few different things in, but Michael Rataj just made too many plays, 29 points, big shot after big shot. They isolated Ben Gregg on a couple occasions. They isolated Braden Huff after Graham Ike fouled out, and Michael Rataj made big play after big play. DeMarco Minor hit a couple big shots. Parsifala had a big game in his matchup with Ike, and that's something to keep an eye on because Parsifala missed the very next game after that. I believe it was with an ankle. Didn't play as efficiently or play as many minutes in their last game against Santa Clara, but that was a great matchup down in Corvallis, those two low post presences going at it. So that'll be interesting to see. What I think Gonzaga needs to do to come out on top against the Beavers at home, get off to another great start and kind of put that doubt in Oregon State's mind early in regards to the fact that, hey, we dropped the game in Corvallis. We've refocused, re-energized defensively, and get out defensively with a ton of focus, a ton of intensity, attention to detail. Get those stops, get on the glass, and allow them to get out and transition and get easy buckets. So I think that's a key. I think you got to make life difficult for Rataj. He had another really good game against Santa Clara. I think he had 24. So he's clearly their go-to guy. So he's going to get opportunities, but you got to make those opportunities difficult. And then what you need to do is you got to make sure Kings doesn't get open threes to get going early in the game like he did down in Corvallis. You can't let Minor get open like he did a couple times down the stretch in the second half. I think he had three really, good plays offensively, pull-ups in that second half. You can't let Fala get EK in foul trouble or get Huff in foul trouble. And then you got to make some of the other guys beat you, really, at the end of the day. Layla Vicious, who had 2 points, Lake, who did play it well down in Corvallis. You got to make those two guys, maybe Matthew Marsh, beat you. You can't let Rataj come in here and get 30 and put the Beavers on his back and come out with a win. So that's a few things to look at for the game on Tuesday night. And yes, I said Tuesday night. Usually in the West Coast Conference in the past, it's been Thursday, Saturday game slates. But I really like the fact that when Stu Jackson came in, he realized there's a big opportunity TV-wise if we shift some of these games to Wednesdays and or Tuesdays. And so you're starting to see a little bit of that now when you move forward throughout the rest of the West Coast Conference play. Gonzaga has a couple Tuesday, Wednesday games sprinkled in, as does the rest of the league, so that you can get those CBS Sports Network games. So you can get the ESPN games on the schedule. So I thought that was great to see. That's the first big challenge this week. The next big challenge, St. Mary's, at St. Mary's in Moraga. That is going to be a heck of a game. You look at St. Mary's, they're 8-0, all alone in first place in the league. Yes, they're schedule has been lighter, so to speak, than Gonzaga's has, but St. Mary's schedule gets a lot more difficult these next few weeks. They got Santa Clara twice. They got San Francisco one more time, Oregon State. They just beat Washington State on the road. They got Gonzaga. And then I believe they also have Washington State at home. So they're coming into the gauntlet where a lot of Gonzaga fans are like, well, we're not going to catch St. Mary's. They're going to win the league this year. We're going to have to win conference tournament title and or get an at-large bid. I disagree. I think the league is still up for grabs, and this is an enormous week for both of those two teams because by the end of this week, next week when we record this, it very well could be a tie for first place, or Gonzaga could be a half game or one game behind very easily. But when you look at St. Mary's, Gonzaga, the high-octane offense, St. Mary's, an unbelievable defense. I think St. Mary's is third in the country in points allowed per game, and Gonzaga second in the country in points scored per game. So this matchup has always been which team can dictate tempo, which team gets the game going at their pace. And I think for Gonzaga, that is it's paramount to have a great start, because if you fall down 6-8 points early to St. Mary's, it's very difficult to speed them up. It's just kind of one of those things where they've always had experience at the point guard position, whether it was Emmett Nard, Joe Rahan, Mickey McConnell, to name a few, Della Vadova, Patty Mills. This year's point guard, Augustus Marciulionis, last year's player of the year in the conference, which I know is going to create a little bit of controversy again this year, because last year so many people thought Anton Watson should have won it. But the fact that St. Mary's won the league title and the tournament title, I think that's the reason Augustus got that nod. But I think he's clearly in a position where he could win it again this year. I think if you look big picture, it could be Graham Ike, it could be Ryan Nembhard. If Malik Thomas and San Francisco get on a hot tear, it could be him because he's scoring it at such a high clip. But, back to the St. Mary's game, I think you look at their roster, Marciulionis experience, he's not going to get out of sorts in any way, shape, or form. You lose Aiden Mahaney, but you got a couple guys that have really stepped up. Jordan Ross has made great strides from freshman to sophomore year. They've got a really good freshman, Mikey Lewis, who can score it. And that's what earned him minutes early in the season. And now he's starting to really defend like Randy Bennett wants his guards to defend. Mitchell Saxon seems like he's been there forever. As of 2 days ago, he was leading the country in offensive rebounds per game, right around 5. So you got to take care of him on the glass, and he's going to be a defensive presence. Luke Barrett, seems like he's been at St. Mary's forever. He's kind of that guy that you hate when he's not on your team, but you love when he's on your team. Does all the little things, plays hard, energy. He just annoys his opponent. He's really playing well this year. He's I believe leading the conference in minutes per game. So he's somebody who's earned Randy Bennett's trust. But the X factor, the wild card that I don't think a lot of Gonzaga fans know about just yet is Paulus Morauskas, transfer from Arizona. He has been unbelievably good. Right around 18 points, 9 rebounds a game, 9 double-doubles on the season. Had 25 at Washington State, I believe, to go alongside 10 rebounds. He's different than a lot of players that St. Mary's has had in the past. Yeah, they had a good 4 last year in Josh Jefferson, who transferred to Iowa State, but Morauskas, he's more of a face-up 4 that can also post up. He's got a plethora of moves down there, but I think he's at his best, picking and popping. And one thing St. Mary's will do more than what they've done in years past is they will isolate him on the wing, lift it and give him some space, give him some freedom to go ahead and attack. I don't remember them doing that with the Dukas or with a Joshua Jefferson or some of the other guys that they've had in the past at the 4 or at the 3. So that's going to be a heck of a matchup for Ben Gregg. He's got to stay out of foul trouble because Morauskas puts a ton of pressure on you in that way. So all in all, big time week coming up for Gonzaga. Looking forward to it. We should know a lot more about this team's chances for the WCC title after these next 2 games. Thanks again to our sponsors, McGillivray Environmental, Wave Capital Lending. Take care, and we will see you again next week.